We are live. Hello, critical thinkers. Hope all is well. Hope all is well. Today, we're going to be continuing our conversation in reference to nurses operating in the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Services. So, about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, I had a very special guest. I had Sean Chung, who spoke about his experience at Marcy, his experience with those correctional officers, some of whom were named in the Robert Brooks murder. And also, in addition to the correction officers, we spoke in detail about the nursing staff on hand, which Sean had direct knowledge of, direct interactions with, had conversations, and saw how the nurses helped cover up the abuses in various correctional facilities, specifically Marcy Correctional Facility. Now, you know, uh, for me, it's important for everyone to think about this in any profession that you're in any profession, especially me. For those of you who don't know, my background is in human resources. So I've worked in all different types of organizations, predominantly nonprofits, some in healthcare, some, education, and there's always conflicts that occur in the workplace. There's always allegiances, alliances that people form, and there's always some level of BS that occurs, meaning that there's some level of wrongdoing, some level of unethical behavior that occurs. But the difference in those facilities that I've worked in compared to the New York State Department of Corrections is that we're talking about the lives of incarcerated individuals. We're talking about crimes committed on a daily basis. And the nurses that who are aware of these crimes, who actively help to cover up these abuses. Now, I've worked in some crazy places myself. I have. And ultimately, I had to leave some of the employers that I worked for because some of them engaged in very unethical behavior, borderline potentially illegal behavior, right? So I had to make a decision to leave those places because I did not want to get dirty myself. And I think this is similar to a lot of nurses who are working in these facilities. Before the stream started, there was a comment from Lily, and I want to thank you, Lily, for being here. So Lily says, being a nurse and knowing many in the DOC, they have all said the same thing. If you open your mouth, you will be targeted and set up. That's why most quote unquote good nurses leave after the first contract. That's why they leave after the first contract. Now, based on my research, based on the collective bargaining agreement, correction officers are getting away with murder, they're getting away with beatings, and when the New York State Department of Corrections is looking to terminate correction officers, 90% of the time, they are unsuccessful in terminating bad correction officers. Can you imagine this? 90% of the time, you are unable to terminate your own staff. And to add insult to injury, docs cannot even make those employment decisions. It goes through a third party arbitrator. It goes through a third party arbitrator. So with that being said, I found an amazing article that I want to share with you. This article comes by way of the Marshall Project. I've covered a lot of their articles, a lot of their investigations. They've done some great work, specifically in the area of research and data and compiling data and making determinations based on that data. For example, they've looked at civil suits, they've looked at disciplinary records, and they're able to come up with conclusions all throughout their website and all throughout, various articles that I've used on my channel. So before I get to the article and share that with you, I'd like to just go to a couple of quick comments very quickly. Um, we have Al Razak. Brooklyn is in the house. Brooklyn, thank you, Al, for being on here. Really, really appreciate it. Keisha Wang. Keisha, thank you for being here again. Thank you so much. We have Nona E828 NYC's in the house. Hello, Nona. Hopefully you're doing well. We have Ann Trower. Ann, thank you for being here. Watching from southeastern Wisconsin. Southeastern Wisconsin. Thank you for being here. Keisha is from Rochester, New York. Rochester, New York is in the house. We got Michelle. Michelle watching from Tampa, Florida. Tampa, Florida. We have Lily saying, being a nurse myself and also knowing many nurses, I've learned from other nurses that have worked doc. You're told my COs, if you open your mouth, you will be set up. It's happened many times. Yes, that's correct. And I think the Marshall Project is going to be highlighting some of that. We have a super sticker. Thank you, Ann, so much with the $5 super sticker. That makes you the stream sponsor for tonight. Thank you, Ann, for your generous donation. I really, really appreciate it. And for those of you just coming on now, if you can do me a favor, if you could like the live stream, like the video, share it with your colleagues. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps with the algorithm, as this content is not content that is it's widely publicized on YouTube. So I definitely need your help in getting this content out there. Thank you for that. And thank you for Ann Trower for being the stream sponsor with your super sticker. Thank you. Thank you so much. We have a comment from Lily. All of the good nurses usually go one contract and run because they're terrified they'll lose their license if they report. I hear that. I hear that. And this Marshall Project article will most likely make references to that. Al, Keisha, how is Keon? Keon Walker, for those of you who don't know, is an incarcerated individual who was beaten. His story was on Sarah Wallace, New York for New York. Keisha is the mom of Keon Walker. So, yeah, Keisha, if you want, please give people a chat. Give people an update on how Keon is. That'll be greatly appreciated. And saying, "Oh my gosh, thank you, Anne, so much." We have Michelle. I just started watching, caught this late. Was talking to my son who was in docs. I'm going to have to watch the replay. No problem. As soon as this live is over, it gets uploaded and you're able to watch it at your leisure. Okay. We have Donna Robinson from Buffalo, New York. Hello, Donna. Thank you for being here. We have Anne. That's really crazy. Yep, yep. Making reference to our nurses, the comments. Leslie Scott saying Rochester in the house, good work. Thank you so much. I'll jump to a couple of other comments real quick, and then we will jump to the article. Lily's from Batavia, New York. Batavia, New York. Luke's wife, hi from the Adirondacks. Hello, Luke's wife. Thank you for being here again. Keisha saying Keon is doing the same in shoe since March 9th. Uh, damn, we definitely have to fight that ticket. Luke's wife, I would say PA Newsmith from Comstock was the worst in dealing with docs for 24 years. Wow. And then the last comment we have, I'll go through before we go to the article. It's from Lily. That's wonderful. I've never heard of the Marshall Project, but I'm going to check into it. Yes, the Marshall Project. This story that I'm reading, that I'll be going through, is linked in the description of this live stream. So definitely click on the link. Go read the article at your leisure, and definitely share their material because they have a wealth of data, a wealth of information, and I've used their articles and their excellent reporting on my channel. So definitely go and support the Marshall Project. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share the article with you, and let's go over it. Okay, so again, this is the Marshall Project. In some New York prisons, infirmaries are dens of hidden violence. After guards beat Robert Brooks to death in December, the Marshall Project found dozens more allegations of abuse in their medical rooms lacking cameras. So we've been talking about the infirmaries. We've been talking about the infirmaries here on Critical Conversations and highlighting how most of the infirmaries are known as torture chambers, they're dungeons. Most are not equipped with cameras by design. Some people want to say that design is because of HIPAA. I don't know. Many others say it's by design of having this be a place where beatings continue to occur. We see that beatings occur typically in threes, right? Beatings occur in the case of Robert Brooks. He was beaten 3 times. The last fatal beating occurred in the infirmary at Marcy. Christopher Keeles, who I'm doing another live stream after this one. We'll be going over an update on Christopher and the latest NBC4 New York Sarah Wallace piece, and his aunt Ruby Rivera will be on. That will be occurring at 10:15 p.m. today after this live stream is over. Okay, but these beatings occur in threes. So let me jump back to the article here. And it's also very important to note that this article, the co-writers are Alysia Santo and Joseph Neff. So a big shout out to Alysia Santo and Joseph Neff for their reporting. Really, really appreciate it. They have consistently been covering the plight of incarcerated individuals. So we have to give our writers their flowers and their just desserts and give them their props and acknowledge them for the work that they do because they put themselves out there. So let's start with the article. The guards carried Robert Brooks into the infirmary face down, holding him by his cuffed hands and ankles. Once inside a private exam room at Marcy Correctional Facility near Syracuse, New York on December 9th, officers beat and choked him while nurses lingered in the hall. Brooks died the next day at a nearby hospital. Lawyers for the Brooks family say the guards intentionally took him to the infirmary because it lacked cameras due to medical privacy concerns. But unbeknownst to the officers and nurses, a few of the guards' body cameras were turned on. The footage of a medical setting transformed into the scene of a brutal homicide shocked the public and led to murder charges against 6 officers. So, for those of you who have not been following the case, there has been 10 correction officers arraigned, indicted on charges, 6 of them murder to depraved indifference, and then the others, along with the 6, face charges such as gang assault, tampering with evidence, so on and so forth. So, just an FYI on that. Back to the article. A few months later, on March 1st, officers beat Messiah Nantry to death. Prosecutors allege in an attack that started in his cell and continued in the infirmary at Midstate Prison across the street from the facility where Brooks was killed. They were not wearing body cameras. Prosecutors have charged 2 officers with murder in the attack on Nantry. And those 2 officers that are charged with murder, we will be discussing them in the next live stream occurring at 10:15 because there's also another connection, as is all these officers who are arrested and arraigned have, this is basically not their first rodeo. There's a consistent pattern of abuse of incarcerated individuals, and this has been occurring for years. Let's continue on. While beating deaths and murder charges like the Brooks and Nantry killings are incredibly rare, alleged physical abuse in New York prison infirmaries is not. So I want to repeat that line. While beating deaths and murder charges like the Brooks and Nantry killings are incredibly rare, Alleged physical abuse in New York prison infirmaries is not. So it seems that these correction officers, they can beat someone to a bloody pulp, and some of them know when to stop, some of them don't. They then move the person to SHU, to segregated housing, so that the individual can heal, and then their wounds heal up, and then nothing is done. Okay. The Marshall Project has identified 46 allegations that correction officers assaulted prisoners in medical wings of New York prisons since 2010, according to a review of court settlements, disciplinary records, and pending lawsuits. 3 prisoners died, including Brooks and Nantry, while many others were left with severe injuries such as collapsed lungs and broken bones. And in the past 6 years, 3 women have alleged in lawsuits that male officers raped them in the infirmary. So not only are correction officers brutalizing and beating incarcerated individuals, there's also a flurry of sexual harassment complaints, and we have allegations of rape from women in these facilities. Let that sink in for a second. Rapes of women in these facilities. It's absolutely disgusting. Disgusting. All right, let's move on. These numbers are probably an undercount of the assaults. I'm going to stop it very quickly. Yeah. So these numbers are most likely an undercount because not all of the beatings that occur with incarcerated individuals are reported, right? They're not reported because there's severe retaliation stemming from, you won't get visits, you're isolated, you're put in SHU, they control your packages, you won't receive packaging. So there's consequences that occur after the beatings if it is reported. Okay. Back to the article. Again, these numbers are probably an undercount of the assaults committed inside medical units, experts said, because many prisoners don't file complaints for fear of retaliation or not being believed. In addition, the Marshall Project analysis didn't include allegations from lawsuits that have been dismissed. So very interesting. So the number that the Marshall Project has come out with does not include the allegations that have been dismissed in civil suits. Let's continue on with the article. Prisoners and advocates say guards abuse people in the infirmary because it's tucked away and has areas with no cameras. Beatings in the infirmary of one New York prison were so common, prisoners called the medical wing the torture chambers. At another facility, the infirmary was called the slaughterhouse. So the place where people are going or are supposed to be going for care, for healing, becomes a place of absolute torture. Very sadistic, very sadistic. Many allegations mirror those in the Brooks and Nantry killings, in which guards continued to attack the men in infirmaries after beating them in different areas of the prison. By the way, for everyone just coming on, if everyone can please do me a favor, if you can like the video, that'd be greatly appreciated. Right now, uh, the likes are at 18. If we can please get the likes to 30, that would be amazing. Thank you so much. Okay. Continuing on. At Great Meadow Prison in the Adirondacks, a teacher slashed her own leg with a razor and blamed it on an incarcerated man. A group of officers then beat the man as they dragged him to the infirmary, he alleged in a lawsuit, where officers ordered the medical staff to leave, placed a plastic bag over his face, and beat him until he nearly died. The teacher later admitted her report was false and resigned. A prison spokesperson said the man never told investigators about the plastic bag. 3 years later, guards at the same prison escorted a prisoner into the infirmary where they kicked and punched him, leaving him with fractured ribs and injured lungs, his lawsuit alleges. Crazy. Quote, we are regularly told about assaults from staff occurring in prison infirmaries, said Sumit Sharma, a director of the Correctional Association of New York, a state prison oversight group that visits with incarcerated people and employees. Quote, there's this understanding that medical staff is not to judge how those assaults happen, but to provide treatment and medical care when those assaults do happen. After the Brooks killing, Corrections Commissioner Daniel Monticello III ordered that all security staff with body worn cameras must record whenever they are around prisoners, including in medical settings. Quote, it's on us to create a culture that isn't based in violence and respects the lives of everyone in our care, Montesulu said in a statement to the Marshall Project. So we know this statement is absolute hogwash. It's absolute malarkey. Because if Daniel Monticello III wanted to do something about the murders and beatings in these facilities, he would have done so already years ago. This is the culture of corruption in the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. There's a culture of corruption that's been there. This is not new. What happened with Robert Brooks was caught on camera, but what you saw has happened to hundreds of other Robert Brooks. It's just this time we saw it on full display, on full display. After the Brooks killing, okay, I'm sorry, I said this already. So again, if he wanted to do something about the beatings, he would have done so already. The fact of the matter is, you can order correction officers to wear body worn cameras, but again, they suffer no consequences. They suffer no consequences for beating and murdering incarcerated individuals. Do you think there'll be consequences for not wearing a body cam? Come on. The Correctional Officers Union, which is NYSCOBA, did not respond to questions or a detailed list of findings for this story. If an officer uses force, medical staff must examine the prisoner as soon as possible and document any injuries. This usually means a trip to the infirmary, but in cases the Marshall Project reviewed, violence that starts elsewhere in the prison continues or even escalates once a person is inside one of the relatively secluded rooms within the medical unit. The infirmary is the biggest beat up place inside of any facility you go to, said Leon Langanine, who said he had been beaten in infirmaries in 3 New York prisons. He is suing the state for a 2018 assault in the infirmary in Elmira. He said assaults often happen in infirmaries because they're one of the few areas without cameras. A prison spokesperson said the department is using new software and hiring analysts to identify patterns in areas where officers use excessive force. He said that many incidents in one location would be a hotspot, calling for further review. On a summer evening in 2023, 2 guards stopped Michael Castaldo, who was incarcerated at Groveland Correctional Facility. While he walked across the yard to pick up mail, Castaldo said he had bumped into one of the guards the day before in his dorm. On the yard, the guard whispered, so you like bumping into people, huh? According to a lawsuit, Castaldo recently filed. Again, these correction officers are sadistic, they're bullies, they target individuals, and this seems to be some sort of sick fetish for them. The guards then knocked Castaldo to the ground. Three other officers joined the fray and began kicking and punching Castaldo and striking him with batons. They handcuffed him and pepper sprayed him before taking him to the infirmary. There, handcuffed on a gurney in an exam room, a sergeant and another guard continued the attack, according to his lawsuit, punching and slapping him in the presence of a nurse. Castaldo said the beating left him with severe hearing loss in his left ear. He said the prison didn't respond to his repeated request for a hearing test. Stitches for open wounds and x-rays for possible broken ribs. A department spokesperson said investigators didn't look into whether guards assaulted Castaldo in the infirmary because he only reported being beaten in the yard. The infirmary is a busy and critically important area in a prison. It is where guards take people for medical appointments and treatments. Sometimes people are held for observation. While many beatings began elsewhere in the prison, in some cases, officers attacked prisoners who were already in the infirmary seeking medical attention. Imagine this is you in the infirmary getting treated for something, and you're the target of an unwarranted attack. When an incarcerated man went to the medical unit at Sullivan Correctional Facility in 2022 with chest pain, officers pepper sprayed and assaulted him, he alleged in a lawsuit, dislocating his jaw and causing permanent hearing loss. The department said that no injuries to the man were reported or noted at this time. His attorney said that's because he wasn't given the opportunity to report his injuries. The department also asserted the man wasn't following instructions and was pepper sprayed and restrained after he lunged at officers. We know that correction officers lie. Let me just make myself big real quick. There are a bunch of people that are totally oblivious or refuse to believe that these correction officers are not angels. The bulk of these correction officers lie. They orchestrate attacks on individuals, and in cases where those officers aren't directly beating them, they falsify documentation, they falsify paperwork, and they look the other way. There's no way you can call yourself a good correction officer when you're seeing someone beaten in front of you and you turn away and do nothing. There's no way. Let's continue on. After Matthew Raymond, and Matthew Raymond is a case that I've covered previously. After Matthew Raymond had a series of seizures in 2016, Troy Mitchell and a group of other officers put him hands cuffed and legs shackled on an exam table in the ER at Auburn Prison. According to a lawsuit filed by Raymond, Mitchell then ordered the nurse, Amy Hoppins, out of the room. And I guess this is Amy here. Mitchell pulled Raymond's shirt over his face, held his head down, and slowly poured a bucket of water over his mouth and nose. According to the lawsuit, Raymond testified that Mitchell then punched him in the face and neck and beat him in the groin with a baton while other officers held his legs open. And one common thing that these officers love to do, they love to target the genitalia of those incarcerated. This is another theme that we find that we saw this in the Robert Brooks video. We saw Anthony Farina shove his foot on the genitalia of Robert Brooks. Absolutely disgusting and deplorable. Raymond suffered permanent injuries to his genitals and bladder from the attack. He underwent surgery to reconstruct his bladder and may never be able to have kids again. The state settled with Raymond for $1.2 million. And for those of you in New York State, congratulations. This is where your tax dollars are going to pay for settlements because correction officers are out of control. Nurse Hoppins examined Raymond after the assault and noted injuries to his face and red marks on his body. But he had on boxers and she did not examine his genitals, she testified. Hoppins testified in the case that Mitchell told her he was going to put in his paperwork that Raymond injured his face during a seizure, but Mitchell had shown Hoppins video that contradicted that story. And when she asked about it, he told her it wasn't her business since it was a security issue. He also said he would destroy the video. Hoppins testified, and the video was never located. Let me just do a quick 30-second commercial for everyone who just came on. Definitely a big thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. If everyone could please do me a favor, please like the video, like the stream, share the stream with someone who you care about or someone who you don't care about. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Liking the video doesn't cost you anything. So if you can please tickle that like button, and if you can subscribe to the channel, click on the notifications icon and select all so that you'll be notified whenever I do a video. Thank you so much. So let's move on with the article. So this is the part of the article where we focus on the nurse and Hoppins, and let's get her vantage point, heard what she has to say. Hoppins felt powerless to report Mitchell. She later testified. He'd been sexually harassing her for years, and he was in her chain of command, she said. So there was nothing she could do without him knowing. Quote, it's their world, you just live in it, Hoppins testified. The department didn't try to discipline Mitchell for the alleged waterboarding. The department did cite him for failing to hand in his state-issued handgun and for emptying a canister of pepper spray point blank into the eyes of another prisoner in the infirmary, a case the state settled for $100,000. Mitchell agreed to retire and forfeit a few months of pay. So, for those of you who don't know, that these correction officers truly get off uh, scot-free in many instances. They have qualified immunity, which means, so it doesn't mean that they cannot face criminal charges. It means that they're not personally liable for any activity that harms another individual on the job. So eventually, we do have to remove qualified immunity so that these correctional officers can be sued personally, and we can go after their homes, go after their assets, because they don't pay a dime and they're able to stay with their pension. So they retire or they resign from the office, from the Department of Corrections, and they're able to collect their full retirement. Somebody please make it make sense. Make it make sense. Back to the article. In a prison medical unit, security directives can sometimes get priority over health needs. Experts say, and nurses don't have the independence they have in other clinical environments. That's something that I hear about from nursing. Oh, by the way, if there's anyone who's in the chat now, if you are a nurse, later on, I'm going to be giving nursing staff the opportunity to come on and have a conversation with me. So if you're interested in coming on, if you're a nurse, if you've worked in the New York State Department of Corrections, or if you worked in another state, I'd love to hear from you. So not right now, but in a few minutes, I'll be posting that link for you to come on. Okay. Continuing on with the article, despite these challenges, nurses should stand up for the prisoners in their camp, and they need leaders who will back them when they do. said Mary Muse, a prison healthcare consultant and former director of nursing for the Wisconsin Department of Corrections. Quote, our role is advocacy for the patient, Muse said. We are given a license. We owe a duty to the public. And part of that duty is following the ethics and standards of nursing. If you're following those standards, then witnessing harm and abuse should give you pause and you should want to intervene. Tucked out of view from most staff and the incarcerated population, infirmaries are isolated, and that can leave people vulnerable to abuse. At New York's female prisons, some women have alleged male guards took advantage of that seclusion and raped them. In August 2022, an incarcerated woman was working her job as a porter in the infirmary at Albion Prison near Lake Ontario. Supervising the infirmary that day was Jonathan De Jesus, who followed her around, groping her and telling her she was beautiful. According to a lawsuit she later filed, De Jesus cornered her alone in the infirmary bathroom, where, according to the lawsuit, he raped her. She saved the evidence in a tampon and reported the assault. De Jesus was later convicted and sentenced to 6 months in jail. An attorney representing De Jesus in the civil lawsuit declined to comment, citing pending litigation. Officers were required to use body cameras at Albion in the areas of the prison without wall cameras. A department spokesperson said De Jesus wasn't issued one that day. Albion had a limited number of functioning body cameras at that time, according to the department. So this is one thing that we hear about, that Kathy Hochul putting in money for all of these facilities and docks to have the officers wear body cameras and to equip these facilities to be fully to have cameras everywhere. So let's continue on. New York prisons began equipping guards with body cameras 10 years ago, but progress was slow. In October, only 7 of the state's 40 prisons were using body cameras, according to New York Focus. There are now 25 prisons equipped with cameras for every officer on duty. So out of, I believe there's 42 facilities and docks now, only 25 are equipped with cameras for every officer on duty. That seems ludicrous. In the beating death of Brooks, the officers may have thought the infirmary afforded them privacy since they never activated their body cameras. But some of the cameras were in fact recording during the assault. The footage has led to calls for reform, including from Brooks' family. There are a lot of atrocities that take place in the prisons. Brooks' father, Robert Ricks, told New York lawmakers during a February hearing. And prior to my son being murdered and me seeing it on TV, nobody could have told me that these things were transpiring in our jails and in our prisons. Okay, that is the end of the article. All right, I will pull that out. And one thing that I will do now is, for anyone that would like to come up and connect with me, have a conversation, I'm really looking to hear from any nurses. If there are any nurses in the chat right now, I will drop the link and you can, come up. The only thing that I will say is that if you do come up, if you can, show your face, make sure your camera's on. Make sure you have no loud music in the background. I don't want to receive any copyright strikes from YouTube, and be respectful. So again, right now this link is strictly for anyone who is a nurse or a nurse professional. I'm going to put that invite in the chat now. Okay, so I put that in the chat, and while we see if anyone wants to come up and connect with me on this, I will go through a few of the comments very quickly. Okay, we have Richard Smith. Richard says, Al Razak, I drove a tractor trailer for them. I delivered everything that the inmates made in the prisons. I brought them to every prison and county jail in New York State. Thank you for that. And Trower and says qualified immunity has got to go. Absolutely, it has got to go. We have to remove qualified immunity so that these correction officers can face monetary consequences when they do wrong. It has to happen. Okay, I'll jump through a few other comments real quick. Kay Romanelli says they should be paying for their lawsuits, not the taxpayers. Exactly. So just understand this. No one is addressing this issue in New York State. No one is addressing this issue. New York State Attorney General Letitia James has been aware of the beatings, of the murders by way of these lawsuits. She's defended these correction officers. From the moment she won her seat, she won that office, she's been made aware of this. People have complained. The New York State Governor, Kathy Hochul, who finally admits that there's a culture of violence. So, for those of you who did not see this, she had an interview, I believe it was with CBS 9. I might be saying the wrong source, but she was asked, is there a culture of violence in New York State docks? She said yes. So, but this should not be a surprise. As governor of New York State, you're aware you have a certain level of fiscal responsibility, and you're aware of the lawsuits and what's being paid out. I'll go to a couple of other comments. Qualified immunity is only available if you don't break the law. So these officers are breaking the law. They're not facing criminal consequences, and these lawsuits are being paid for by the city, by the state of New York taxpayers. So horrible, horrible. All right, I'll post up a couple of other quick comments that I think we might end soon. Okay, so I want to give a special shout out to Anne again, Ann Trower, who is the stream sponsor. Thank you so much for being the stream sponsor. Thank you so much for the super sticker. I really appreciate it. For everyone who is on, I really appreciate you being here. If you can do me a favor and like the video, like the live stream, share it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. There were thousands of people, literally thousands of people who come to Critical Conversations HR, who watch the videos on a consistent basis, but you haven't subscribed yet, okay? Do me that favor, man. Please subscribe to the channel. Let's make it official. Put a ring on it. Subscribe. You like the content, you're here, consistently. Subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it, and I thank you. Okay. I'm doing a second live stream. For those of you who don't know, I'm doing a second live stream. It's going to occur at 10:15 p.m. And I'm going to put a link to the live stream now in the chat. So basically, in this live stream, I'm going to be covering the most recent update regarding Christopher Keelis. So for those of you who don't know, Christopher Keelis was beaten at Mid-State Correctional Facility the day before the day before Messiah Nantry was brutally murdered. Okay? The day before Christopher Keelis was beaten. His aunt, Ruby Rivera, who, for any one of you out there, if you ever wanted an aunt, a Titi that's going to be fighting for you, this is the woman who you want in your corner. Because when she found out from the family members of other incarcerated individuals, she found out from a family member who had their incarcerated individual in SHU. She found out. She went down to the facility. They basically lied to her and told her nothing was wrong with Christopher. Not only that, she went to a state trooper to have a wellness check done. He was unable to do that. He did not have the authority to go into a New York State correctional facility. This is the woman who you want on your side. She was on Sarah Wallace, NBC4 New York yesterday. We are going to be going over the bombshell updates. You don't want to miss this. So for those of you who plan to stay awake, come back and join me at 10:15 p.m. as we go over the Sarah Wallace coverage, and we will be speaking directly with Ruby Rivera. So for everyone on the stream now, again, I want to say thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Never would I thought that there would have been this much interest in this. A lot of you care about incarcerated individuals. And the thing that I will say is that, yes, there are people behind bars that have made mistakes. They're paying the price for their crime, right? Just because you are incarcerated doesn't give correction officers a license to beat the shit out of you. They don't have that authority to do that. People are sentenced to do time. They are not sentenced to do death in prison or suffer this sadistic torture that's been occurring, that's been widespread at the New York State Department of Corruption and Criminal Statist. So, with that being said, come back at 10:15 p.m. I included a link to the 10:15 live stream. Go off and have a cup of coffee, have a nightcap. I will see you at 10:15 p.m. Take care. God bless, and see you hopefully within the next 23 minutes. Take care. God bless you. Bye bye.